This is how I created an accidental 4 hour work week. So, I hope in a couple seconds I'll see some people on and I'll see that you're going to tell me that you could hear me, which would be super cool. Um, I've been struggling with microphones lately, always issues with microphones and audio. Mark is on over there. Welcome, Mark. Good to see you again. And I'm going to scoot this camera down just a hair. And a couple people on the Facebook side. So I'm trying to multicast thing and hopefully it'll work. I'm trying to keep it a little tighter. I had someone comment, I can't remember the person's name, but someone commented on YouTube that there were too many words and not enough information, which I can respect. These live streams are totally brand new for me. So I did 5, I think, last week, or 4 last week, and a webinar. Thing is, it's a little more flowy. I can't prepare as much because I'm taking inputs from 2 different places, and I don't have any like producers or anything helping me with this stuff. I'm just sitting here literally at my desk with 2 devices trying to do it. So I'll try and keep it tighter, and I'm going to try to basically prepare a little bit more ahead of time. Although today I didn't do as much other than to go run and grab the book like 30 seconds ago. So, anyway, The 4 Hour Work Week is a book by Tim Ferriss, whom I'm a big fan of, and I actually have a couple other books sitting like right there of his. My monitor's sitting on top. Tools of Titans and 4 Hour Body, and I also have 4 Hour Chef. So I'm a big fan of Tim's, and this book was written like 10 years ago, I think, and I have the expanded, updated version that came out, I think, in 2010 or so, but I got it on eBay. By the way, if you don't have this book yet, go to eBay. You could probably find a used hard copy for like $4. I got this for like $4 a couple years ago. Funny thing is, I didn't read The 4 Hour Work Week until like 3 years ago or so. I think I thought I knew what was in the book before that. I heard people talk about it as soon as I got involved in internet marketing, like 2013. But for that period before that, those years before 2013, I never even heard of the book. I wasn't really into entrepreneurship or marketing or anything like that. So it was really just something that I like heard about in pop culture a little bit. Maybe I saw it at a bookstore, but I never paid attention to it. And like I said, I thought I knew what was like in the 4 Hour Work Week, but I really had no idea. Now, I usually, and actually I forgot to mention, if you're on, let me know where you're from, even if you're on here all the time, like Leo and Dave and Mark, and I think a couple other people were on here too. Emil, yeah. So all the folks, you can type it in there. It's always good for people to see afterwards. And then Nick over on the Facebook side, thanks for letting me know you could hear me. And from Philly, Mark, and Sergio from Spain, awesome, very cool. So, the one of the questions I want to ask is how many people have read the 4 Hour Work Week, and then how many people haven't? You can just say yes or no. That'll sort of like help me gauge what's going on. Hey, Adrian, what's up? Thanks for joining up. So, and I'll just mention it because the couple main points that I want to cover are in the 4 Hour Work Week. There's a lot of like sort of new ideas if you haven't been exposed to like such a book before, but in a lot of ways, it was just sort of pulling together a lot of ideas that were from different genres. So, one of the big takeaways that I had was the idea of sort of like time currency. So, your time is super valuable, and you can get paid in other ways besides money, and one of them is with time. So, if you have an availability of time, you kind of come out ahead in a lot of ways. And one of the other concepts is like the deferred life plan, where you work for many years where your plan is to retire, basically you defer your enjoyment until later on. And I mean, the idea of it is you work for like 30 or 40 years and then you retire when you're basically older, you're not as able-bodied, maybe you can't travel as much. That's like one of the things people want to do. It's like travel, visit family and friends. But when you're older, like you're not as able to travel, you can't do as much stuff. Maybe I like to hike and do stuff outside, and maybe in another 30 years I won't be able to do as much stuff outside. So it's much better for me to like do my traveling now. So this whole post and what we're going to talk about is my accidental 4-hour work week. So as I mentioned, I didn't read the 4-hour work week until like 2014, I think. Even though I kind of thought I knew what was in there, I heard people talk about it. I never really like spent the time to go and read it. And I'm going to scroll down. I see a decent number of people have read the book. Mark hasn't. David has. Cool. And I see Bastian from Toronto. Thanks. And then Leo got it from the library. Smart. I check out the library too. It's a great place to get books. So here's how I accidentally got into this 4-hour work week. And I was actually like, I like live the 4-hour work week for a little while before I even read the book and like realized that I had implemented a lot of this stuff over time. And it's interesting when I explain it. Hopefully you'll see that it was a very gradual process. Now, one of the concepts that Tim talks about in the book is around, I guess, claiming back some of your time and being able to do some traveling or whatever hobbies that you sort of want to do. Most of the time it is traveling and like taking some vacations and that sort of thing. One of the things that was happening at my job at the time, so I was doing like management consulting and I was working for a software company as a project manager. And very slowly, this was over a period of a couple years, very slowly the culture of the company was changing. So like many big companies, they had big office buildings that they were leasing. And slowly their teams were being, like certain portions of teams were being outsourced to offshore like entities. Maybe it was still part of the same company, but the team was located in the Philippines and, it was sort of transparent. Everything worked fine. Maybe the team was in India, whatever. But what would happen is a lot of the team would be offshore, so we weren't necessarily working together anyway. One of the other things that sort of happened is, I guess, like bandwidth increased in like on the internet. Tools and video conferencing software were sort of being developed, and they were proprietary systems that the company that I was working with was using. But basically, instead of like everyone going to a conference room for a meeting, we were holding all of our meetings on our laptops, and we would be sitting, like 2 or 3 people would be sitting in the same row, some would be sitting in another building, and some people would be sitting in another city. So we would have our team meeting, and would all be virtual, right? Even though some of us were sitting right next to each other, we still didn't go to a common room. We still held our meetings on the machines. The other thing that was happening is we were getting very specific. We were getting like double booked for all of our meetings. Not for all of our meetings. We were getting double booked very often. So even if there was a conference room, a lot of times people would bow out and just go to multiple meetings at their desk. That's multitasking and it's dumb, but that's what we were doing. So that was just the culture, and that's how things were operating. Additionally, we were losing, so that was going on, we were also losing our seats and our cubes. So we would not go to the office every day. We would actually, work at home for 1 day a week. So that started really slowly. So we would work at home 1 day a week. Then it went to 2 days a week, and over maybe a year or two, it went to 2 or 3 days a week, and then it was sort of like we didn't have a proper schedule on when people were working from home or not. So what happened was you would end up going to the office so you could like meet with some of your colleagues, but they wouldn't be there, and they wouldn't tell you that they weren't going to be there, and basically the office ended up being really quiet, and I would be like one of 5 people on an entire floor in like a high-rise building in Midtown Atlanta. So I'd go up there, there'd be no one else. I'd have like a beautiful view on like the 20th floor, and no one would be up there. It was crazy. So anyway, people were working at home more and more. Well, at some point, and by the way, I had like 2 cubes. So I had an office like up in Alpharetta, and then one in Midtown. If you're familiar with Atlanta, you'll understand like they're kind of far apart, but I had places I could sit, and I could go to either one whenever I wanted. So what happened was, I mean, basically, even if I went to the office and someone else did too, we could be at the opposite offices. So, cut to the chase here, I ended up working from home a lot, and it started really gradually. Started at like 1 day a week, and then it went to like 4 days a week, and I would just go to the office because I needed to run some errands, or like after work, or I just wanted to get out of the house, which sort of tapered down as I got more used to working from home, because it turns out the time currency that Tim was talking about, and it's also in a book called Vagabonding, also by Rolf Potts. Like, if you have the freedom of time, well, I mean, that changes everything. And it turns out I was actually making, the same salary. I just wasn't commuting and spending, hundreds of dollars on gas per week. And I didn't have to do dry cleaning because I was just wearing these, like, same crappy t-shirts that I wear now. Not that they're bad. This was a gift from my sister and brother-in-law, custom-made shirt here. I need to, maybe if I'm doing these live streams, I should dress a little better, by the way, but that's a whole other thing here. So, here's what happened next. My wife was also working remotely part of the time. She was an account manager for some company that I won't mention, or any of the companies that I work for, but she was working as an account manager, so she had a lot of freedom because at least half her time she was on client sites. Sometimes had to travel out of state, so she had a great amount of freedom also. So the interesting thing was we figured out that we could, maybe take a week over in Hilton Head and work our normal work hours, but we'd be in Hilton Head, which is, if you're not familiar with Hilton Head, it's like a beach resort town in South Carolina. It's pretty nice. It was a few hours away, and a couple benefits, right? So we'd be able to drive over there in less than a day, right? So if some kind of emergency happened and we needed to head back to the office for some reason, if there's like some emergency meeting, which I didn't have a job that was so important that I would have to come back to the office for an emergency meeting, but we had the capability if needed. So we tried it, right? So I brought my laptop, we had VPNs, we could work remotely, totally transparent. People wouldn't even know if you were out of the office, or in the office, or at your home, or in Hilton Head. So we tested it a couple times like that. Now, the other part I will mention is, I wasn't doing it like under the radar. I could tell people that hey, I'm going on vacation, but I'm going to be working normal hours because I know like how important my project is right now, and I'll do the meetings that I need to do, and it's no problem. I'll work while I'm on vacation. So it was like a very slow change within the culture of the company where people were doing that. Just a little bit, only people that were sort of on the edge of like acceptable and would push the limit. And I guess I'm one of those people, apparently. So essentially, we tested it out. Went to Hilton Head, worked out fine. transparent. My client loved working with me, so it was totally fine. Fast forward a few years later, and that was probably like 2010, 2011 or so. So fast forward just a little bit, and I and my wife were thinking, hey, well, that's working out well. Um, you know, we could go longer, like a month. So we actually had my wife has some family in Fort Wayne, Indiana, which is not as cool of a place to visit as the beach. But we could also stay there for free, where, if you go to Hilton Head, you're renting a house, it's a little more expensive. So we actually tested out for a month in this concept for a month in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So again, not a super touristy area, but it's a nice, quiet, like sort of small town. Although I'm in a town that's smaller than Fort Wayne right now, but it's a nice town. There's not too much traffic, pretty quiet. They have, Target, Walmart, Starbucks, all the things you need. And we had family. So we were going to help out my wife's grandma at the time. So we were just, doing that. Again, I wasn't doing this under the radar. I talked to my manager, hey, gonna be doing some family stuff. I'd like to work remotely from Fort Wayne for the month of October. Sure, no problem. That's great. You're able to do it. Blah, blah, blah. And the thing is, other people were doing this kind of stuff too, but they weren't so forthright like me. I would tell people because I didn't want to jeopardize my, professionalism or anything like that. So I would tell people what I was doing and they accepted it because I was doing a good job also. Okay. So we tried it for a month and that worked out. It wasn't a super awesome place, but then we started to, as we were testing it out, we figured out like the pitfalls with what we were doing, figured out what worked, areas we needed to watch out for. And it turns out, I mean, you hear I'm fast forwarding years, after working at home in Atlanta for, roughly 3 to 5 years off and on, I mean, it was fine. I knew how to do it. So, of course, you're seeing how this fits together where, the 4-hour work week comes in, and I may have a delivery coming up here, so I may have the doorbell ring. So, okay. Basically, this is one of the concepts that Tim talks about where you can negotiate with your boss about like traveling, having your freedom with your time, and yep, that was the bell. I'll mention that in a sec. Actually, I'll go get the box. We can do a live unboxing here if people are humored with it. But so basically, one of the things that Tim talks about is being able to negotiate with your boss, proving that you can work remotely, and then executing it, doing it, traveling, doing what you like to do. And it's huge, right? So I was lucky with the company that I was working with to be able to actually fit within their parameters as they were kind of kicking us out of the offices because, they weren't going to keep paying for the space. People weren't there. It really wasn't worthwhile for me to go to the office, so on and so forth. So I was really easily able to sort of weasel my way into this 4-hour work week. It was totally accidental. I didn't even know there was like a concept of doing this. None of my peers were traveling in the way that I was. So, okay, going back to it, I would, we tested this stuff out in Fort Wayne, and then we were like, okay, we're going to do something a little bit bigger. We had some friends who live in Denver. So we actually traveled out to Denver from Atlanta, brought our dog, at the time Brody. So we did a road trip because we couldn't fly with a 50-pound dog. So we drove out there over like 3 or 4 days. And we stayed the full month in Denver, and it was awesome. We were able to check stuff out. It's like a slow travel. That's how I described it. I heard people mention the concept of slow travel. And it was really awesome because, we felt like, even though I had spent a lot of time in Denver before that, I'd been a dozen times probably, we were still treating it like a vacation. So we were doing stuff that like our friends weren't necessarily doing. Certain hikes. We were checking out like anything important to us in Denver. We were like, oh, we better go check that out. So we were taking advantage of the fact that we were there, and we were treating it like we were on vacation, but we didn't have to, stay busy all the time. We could, you know, light a fire in the fireplace, hang out with our friends, drink some whiskey, and have a nice time there. And then over the weekends, we could, do whatever, go on hikes and that sort of stuff. So, as it turns out, like we were able to work it out in a very slow way, and I think probably right. So the book's a little dated now. It's 2007, so it's 10 years old. So some of the really sort of like innovative things that we may think of from the 4 Hour Work Week, they're not as, I guess, they don't sound as crazy now because people work remotely a lot more now, and it's very common for companies to hire people outside their regions, and it's not a big deal. So most of us probably know people like that. And I'm trying to think. Basically, we continued doing it, right? So we went to places like Austin, which was really cool. We extended road trips out. So we'd maybe go back to Denver, and then we go to Santa Fe, for example. We went to the Grand Canyon. We traveled around, and really, we weren't constrained, right? So sure, I would take days off, but it wasn't anything more or less than when I was working in town, and it was totally transparent. So, as it turns out, the mistake that people probably make is they think that they read the book, they get excited, they go in and they're trying to negotiate with their boss on this concept that's pretty new. I mean, depending on what company you work for, they may not have a culture where they're supporting this remote working at all. And if you're the first person that's trying to work remotely, you're probably going to have trouble. The thing is, that part was accepted in my company already, so I was able to transition pretty seamlessly, although it was a slow process. And that's the part that I think people mess up on. They think that they can go in, negotiate, get this locked down pretty quickly, and then start traveling. And it's usually something you're going to have to work your way into, like anything, right? So anything worthwhile is probably going to take a little while to get into. So I think if you are interested in trying to work remotely and your company doesn't have a culture of attempting to work remotely, or people don't work remotely in general, then you'll probably have to start really small, where it's like a half day, like once a month, and you may have to really ease into the idea. Now, one of the things that Tim does point out is, if you are able to run like one of these trials or a pilot of working from home to show your boss how it can work, you should do exceptionally well on the days where you're working from home, so that it's a no-brainer. It's like your boss will see that you actually are more efficient and you work better when you're working from home. So I can keep going on and on, but I'll leave it at that for now. And I see what we could do. We could let some questions come through. So if you have any questions on like the 4 Hour Work Week, my accidental version of it, or if you just want to tell me about like your 4 Hour Work Week or your vision of how you could do it, that'd be cool too. I didn't mention it before. If you're watching in the replay, feel free to ask questions there. I'll come back and answer the questions later. So I'm going to grab the box while people ask questions. I think Matthias asked something, but I'll be right back. right, I'm back. Sorry to leave you. And I'm not sure if Nick's still over there, but thanks for hanging in there, Nick. If you have any questions, just give me a shout over on Facebook. Okay. I'm just going to scroll back. Okay. And then David mentions the E-Myth Revisited. I've skimmed through it. I haven't read the whole thing. I have heard it's very good. Thanks to Hunter for joining up. Oh, thanks. Tahana mentions you find me relatable in the way I speak. So that's cool. Thanks for the compliment. John from San Antonio, thanks for joining up. And John also mentions homeschooling, housekeeping, and doing the site work and not making an income. So yeah, that definitely, there's a lot of stuff going on. Okay. And then Matthew says, you've seen most of my streams, but I haven't said much. Cool. Thank you for watching. And then you say, am I open for questions? Yeah, you could ask questions. You could ask random questions here. It's good if they're related, but you know, I mean, I'm on here and other people can find value from it too. If you have a question, other people do too. Then Nick asked, oh, excellent question. Nick asked over on the Facebook side, do I have a list of my recommended books? Not really. If you go to Niche Site Project/resources, there are about 4 books. Those are some of my favorites on there. But I'm actually thinking about putting together a list and maybe even doing like quick summaries on YouTube probably of those books. But I could tell you a couple that I really like right now are Deep Work is one. And then what is another one that I just read? There's one called Peak, which is very good, and Grit, which kind of go hand in hand. But both of those books sort of like emphasize the fact that you can learn things if you put time into it. So some people, especially around, okay, actually I'll just tell you my example really quick, Nick. So I like those 2 books, Peak and Grit. And Deep Work is sort of related, but it's really helped me understand that, you know, if you put time in and you study something, even if you're not natural at it, you can get much better at it. So I haven't done much writing in the past because I have an engineering background and kind of stuck on the tech side of IT. So I didn't really have to write that much. But now as I'm working for myself online as an internet marketer, writing is a huge part of what I do, and it's really like the root of like any of these YouTube videos that I'm doing. Like I have to write it all out first. These live streams are much rougher cut because I don't prepare ahead of time as much. It's just it's like a post-it note of my ideas. So for me, it really showed me that I can get much better at writing if I practice and take feedback and try to get better. But it won't happen, you know, I'm not a natural writer, but no one is. No one knows how to write automatically. And I don't have to be an elite writer. I just have to be able to get my ideas out. So anyway, those are a couple books that I'd recommend. And I think I'll answer the questions over here, and then we'll wrap it up. I see we're getting on about 30 minutes here. Okay, so Matthew says, you'd love to create the 4-hour work week, but for working for yourself, but you find the niche scene becoming too crowded. All the interesting subjects are crowded with big sites. Okay. Should one pick a niche you like and maybe not succeed, or pick a really specific smaller one that you might now be interested in? Okay. So you're right. It can be crowded. And I think it's kind of a general question, and your situation is obviously pretty unique. I would say go after something that you're interested in so that even if it doesn't work out very well, you've spent time on something that you're interested in, so you'll probably get better at it, which is really important, right? So in one of the books by Scott Adams, actually that's another book. It's like how to win big and or how to lose at everything and still win big. That's a very good book. And one of the concepts that Scott Adams mentions in that book is around choosing projects where even if it doesn't work out, you end up better off one way or another. So things that you can get from a failed project are increasing your network, right? So you can meet people that are interesting and maybe you could help them later or they could help you later. Another thing is like learning skills, right? So even if your niche site doesn't work out in a topic in which you're interested in, well, at least you've learned how to create a site, you've learned about content and writing, and you've learned how you can build a site. And I'll tell you, like the first 3 sites that I had or so, at least the first one, well, the first one didn't work out that I actually spent time on. And then as soon as I like this, I think everyone does this, right? As soon as you buy like your first domain, you're like, I'm going to start a website. You go ahead and buy like 5 other domains thinking, oh, these are great keywords too. I'm going to also have like these other 4 sites that I'll work on, I'll just work on it a little bit. Turns out like most people don't work on them at all. They just kind of drop them. And then, so that's what happened. So at least like the first site and then the 2 that I didn't work on at all, they kind of went away, right? So those other sites went away. However, once I kind of figured out like how to do some of these things, like those weren't failed sites, those were stepping stones that was a path I had to go on to actually like build the site that did well. And then I built like 5 other sites after that. After the first one did well, I built like 5 other sites that also didn't work out because they were penalized because of the PBN, which Leo, thanks. I saw you did mention that. I published a video over the last couple days about PBNs and why I don't use PBNs anymore. So thanks for watching it, by the way. But I did like 5 other unsuccessful or I failed at 5 other things that were also stepping stones that helped me learn certain pieces of the niche site process. And like I said, you could usually increase your network and meet more people, which is really important. So over that time, I met more and more people in this area. So now I have a decent network of people that I can, ask for advice or, just chat with them. So, okay, Matthias has another question. You managed to snatch a really good domain name equal to a big outdoor brand minus the ending of the brand. Would that be a good site, or will it always be outranked by the big brand? So, okay, that's probably a bad idea, just in general. So I know you're asking a specific question, but I'm going to answer it differently. You're probably going to have an issue because of copyright and trademark issues, right? So I advise highly not to pick a name that's similar to a bigger brand. They don't care for a long time, but as soon as you start getting traffic, you'll get a letter from a lawyer, and then you're going to have to rebrand everything. So that's one. This answer will be harsh, so I'm sorry. So that's one. 2, the domain name really doesn't matter that much, right? So no one's going to go to your website because it has a cool name. At least not the way I build sites. I'm worried about like SEO and like getting traffic from Google organically using white hat ideas. So basically, I think you're focusing on the wrong part. The domain name doesn't matter. So sorry if that sounded harsh, but you should focus on other areas, and I would advise you not to use that domain name. And then the other question is, will you always be or would that be a good site, or will I always be outranked by the big brand? You won't always be outranked by the big brand. It does have to do with like the SEO on site and off site, and small sites can beat big sites. And Tahana asks, do you use any software like Mixpanel? No, I'm not even sure what that is. Embarrassingly, I have no idea what that is. All right. But you know what? Shoot me an email, Tahana. Let me know, because I'm not sure like what that is, and maybe I should know. And then Emil asks, where do I find my writers? I go to Upwork. In fact, right now I'm hiring I just hired like 8 people in the last week. And I kept, I think, 5 of them, and they're working on 2 different sites for me. And it took me, I was kind of dreading doing it, right? I had to dole out the assignments and stuff. So it took me about an hour yesterday on Sunday, and I assigned 50 articles. So I'm pumped about that. It'll take them a few weeks to get done, and it'll cost me, I'm paying like $14 per article. So however the math works out on that, it'll be a few $100, and I'll have 50 articles for 2 different sites. And this is part of like KGR content where I'm like ramping up. I'm going to publish a whole lot of stuff in the next few months. All right. Any other questions? I got a couple boxes here to open up. It doesn't have anything to do with the content that we talked about, but since a couple more questions may come through, I'll go ahead and open this, and then I'll show you what it is. And thanks again, Nick, for watching over there. Appreciate it. On the Facebook side, and it seems like Facebook is losing big time. I guess I'm going to have to put my time into YouTube, which works out well for me. I think it actually converts a little better. So I was having trouble with the audio. I got this new camera here. There's I published a video on that, but I got this new camera, which is cool. It actually looks just like my old one, but it's a Canon T7i, and it's much easier to shoot video of yourself with that camera because of the good autofocus. But the microphone, it's actually better than I was expecting. A lot of people really are harsh on the onboard microphones of DSLRs, and I understand they don't sound super great, but I mean, I'm doing some editing anyway, so I could play with the levels, and usually it's passable, right? It doesn't sound awesome, but the content's more important than like some of the other details. However, I couldn't help myself, and I was like, hey, I'm going to get this much nicer mic that'll fit on top, and it's I guess it's what do you call it, a shotgun mic, so it's very directional, so it cuts out a lot of the other noise. And the big thing is it's super windy here in this area that I'm in quite often, so if I just go outside and I want to film just a little tiny bit, like the wind is just crazy, but this should hopefully help out quite a bit. And anyway, so I'll get this bad boy out, and hopefully it'll work well. It's a Shure Lenshopper VP83, so it's sort of like on the higher end of like prosumer, I guess. And yeah, I'm excited to get it out. So all right, thanks for joining up. I'm gonna keep doing these this week. Probably gonna do like a proper webinar either on Wednesday or Thursday, but I'll send out an email and stuff, and you'll know. So we will see you again soon. Thanks again for showing up, and have a great day.